Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you from whenever and wherever you are joining us. I know that this is a virtual conference like they have been, in recent history. And so it's really nice to have the capability for attendees to join from across the globe in their time zone, whether that's, live with the session or, on demand later. This is BI and Analytics for Couchbase, a session on connecting to Couchbase from any application. My name is Jared Johnson, and I am a technology evangelist with CData Software. I've been with CData Software for over 8 years now, worked my way from support through development into technology evangelism, and it's my pleasure to be participating in Couchbase Online. And I want to thank Couchbase for having us and allowing us the opportunity to present to you today. So with that, we'll jump in and I'll give a brief introduction of the company. So CData Software is based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We have offices across the globe, and we're a leader in data connectivity solutions. And that means data connectivity solutions for anyone who's touching data, whether that's an enterprise application, developer, a data scientist, citizen analyst. It could even be your mom and pop shop that simply wants to look at their enterprise data or their cloud data in Excel, for instance. So we're an established company with a history in software and a history in data connectivity. And what I would like to talk to you today about is our mutual customers with Couchbase. So I'll share a couple of mutual customer stories. Then I'll jump into the CData solutions themselves, kind of how they work, the problems that they solve, and I'll dig deep into the exact way that they work with Couchbase and what they enable for Couchbase customers. And then I'll spend the most of my time in the session today on demoing our products. So we'll look at several different software solutions that CData provides, working with BI and analytics on top of Couchbase data in a variety of platforms. So CData and Couchbase customer stories, we have a variety of customer stories, and there were two that I really wanted to highlight in this session. The first is an international cruise line. So this is a company that had historically been using a relational database to store their data, and they found Couchbase and were really captivated by all of the features and functionality that Couchbase offered on top of a relational database. And so they started migrating all of their data to that relational database. They had been doing their reporting and their analytics in Tableau, and they wanted to continue that process. They wanted to continue to be able to use those reports and the practices and skills that their teams had learned in Tableau to continue, finding insights and really digging into their data in ways that made sense and allowed them to make decisions based on their data that helped grow their business. And so they turned to CData because CData continued that process. So despite the fact that the data was housed in Couchbase, the CData Tableau connector continues that live connectivity in Tableau, which means that their users get real-time access to Couchbase data. They can build dynamic dashboards, build real-time reports. So the result for that customer is ultimately that they get uninterrupted reporting and analytics efforts. So all of the work that they had done, all of the practices and skills that they had built in their reporting within their data teams translated one-to-one, despite the fact that they had migrated from a traditional relational database into Couchbase. The second customer that I want to highlight is a financial services provider. They had adopted Couchbase, again, for many of the same reasons that the International Cruise Line did, as far as scalability and reliability, performance. And they wanted to be able to integrate Couchbase into their existing ETL processes. So they were using the SSIS platform to move data into and out of a variety of services and a variety of data platforms to meet their needs and their customers' needs. And so they wanted to continue that. They didn't want to have to rip and replace their ETL processes just because they had adopted Couchbase. And they chose CData because CData provides native SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services connectivity to Couchbase. So they're able to continue working with the same processes that they had been using before. That it made adopting Couchbase easier. So they were able to kind of secure their ETL processes despite the fact that they had adopted a new platform. So the result is that they saved IT resources and were able to continue their ETL processes. The CData SSIS components are are built and maintained on schedule. So every time Couchbase updates, the SSIS components are going to update as well. So the components are already developed and they're maintained. And that means their IT teams don't have to build those integrations. They don't have to maintain those integrations. They simply need to install the latest package whenever Couchbase updates, and they can continue working with Couchbase data in their ETL processes uninterrupted. So with the two customer stories out of the way, what is it that CData actually does? So we make Couchbase look like a relational database, and I feel a little dirty saying that, only because Couchbase is as great a product as it is because it is a NoSQL database. It provides its own SQL-like interface through NCL and through SQL++. But CData takes the final step in that process of working with data and makes it look exactly like a relational database. And our engineers have built out ways to leverage the way that Couchbase reports metadata on its buckets and reports metadata on the items in those buckets, as far as providing some structure around that data. But ultimately what it means is that your applications, your scripts, your platforms that speak SQL are able to speak directly to Couchbase. So as queries are built, as your developers are writing SQL queries, the CData drivers and connectors translate those queries into NCL and SQL++, depending on whether you're using the query or analytics platform or services rather, and get the data from Couchbase. And then when they return the data, they take it in its raw form from Couchbase and return it to whatever application or platform you're using as a tabularized model. And so you get seamless access to your Couchbase data from all of the tools, platforms, and applications that you're already using. Because those tools already know how to talk to a relational database, the CData connectors simply provide that translation as part of their functionality. So what kind of problems do the CData connectors solve? So we're supporting critical initiatives across the data ecosystem. You're able to manage your data, work with your data, analyze it, report on it, build applications on top of it, and so on. So we provide functionality and we solve problems across BI and analytics, across data warehousing, data governance, data prep, data storage, data virtualization. So no matter where your data initiatives are, no matter where your efforts are in working with your data, CData has a connector that's going to allow you to continue to use Couchbase alongside those data efforts that you're already using. So let's take a couple minutes to dig into the CData connectors, kind of more how they work, what they enable. So CData connectors are going to connect to live Couchbase data from popular BI reporting and ETL tools. So with Couchbase query, with all of the indexing available and the performance that's available from the query service, you can build out your comprehensive analytics and reports. You can build applications that work with data in real time, that are able to pull massive amounts of data. And we do this by supporting the query service. So because our connectors can convert SQL queries or other modes of communicating with data into NCL, they get that seamless connectivity to Couchbase. So if you're in Power BI building a comprehensive report across several buckets or several sub documents within your buckets, you're able to get high performance reporting because of all of the engineering that's done on the Couchbase side, and because of the CData connector's ability to translate the data request from Power BI into a NCL query. We also enable ad hoc reporting and data exploration, and we do this through the analytics service. So, the analytics service allows you to, get a broader picture of what your data is. Look at broader scopes of buckets as you are working with your data, working to understand what it looks like, and the CData connectors allow you to extend that into your data exploration tools. So if you're curious about what data is available in these buckets, you could open something like DB Visualizer and be able to explore your Couchbase database through DB Visualizer thanks to the CData connector. If you aren't sure what your report should look like, if you aren't sure how you should be building something out, you can open up Tableau and you can explore your data in real time, live, as it's connecting thanks to the engineering that's been done on the CData connectors and the engineering that's been done in the analytics service. You get to integrate Couchbase into your custom development and your artificial intelligence and machine learning efforts. So we have native connectors that are based on connectivity standards for databases. So ODBC, JDBC, ADO.NET. But we also have bespoke connectors for specific technologies. So we have Power BI connectors, we have Tableau connectors, we have Excel connectors, and then we also have connectors for a variety of development languages. So I mentioned ADO.NET. So if you're writing applications in ASP.NET or in C#, you can connect directly to Couchbase. If you're working in Python, you can connect directly in Couchbase, connect directly to Couchbase rather, from your Python scripts. And the same holds for a variety of scripting languages and development platforms. So R, Go, and that list goes on. The crux of the matter is that you get simplified connectivity no matter where your Couchbase data is, whether that's on-premise or it's in the cloud, and whether that's Couchbase, the actual Couchbase cloud service, or you have a hosted Couchbase instance, somewhere in AWS or Azure or in Google. So ultimately, that's what you're going to see when you are using the CData connectors is simplified connectivity to your Couchbase data from whatever platform, whatever application, whatever development library you're using. So I've got 4 demos in the wings, and I will do my best to get through all 4, but I may have to drop one just depending on how time goes. So we're going to look at Couchbase mostly in the BI and analytics scope. So Tableau, Power BI, I'll build a chart in Python and I'll build a chart in R. But especially with the Python and the R demo, you'll see how easy it is to work with Couchbase data in development languages and scripting languages. So with that, we're going to jump into the live demos. So give me just a second. So we're going to jump to, we'll start with Tableau. So I have a pre-built worksheet in case the demo goes sideways while I'm in the midst of doing it, but we'll do things, live as we go. So to connect to Couchbase, you're going to connect to a server. You can see it here because I've used it recently, but it would be in here. We want to connect to Couchbase by CData. If your list here is huge, you could always search. So we're going to connect to Couchbase. And it's at this point that you're going to enter credentials for your Couchbase instance. So, the server, the administrator, we've got the password. And then there are options, other options for connectivity. If you wanted to enable logging, if you wanted to limit to specific tables, and these are kind of the buckets that get used, you can set the type detection scheme. So this uses the doc type, and it uses infer where it can. And you can actually set the service that's used. So you can set an additional connection string property to say, I want to specifically use the query service, or I want to specifically use the analytics service to leverage the functionality that's available there. But as it is, I'm going to hit sign in. Yep, this is do it live. So let's try that one more time. There we go. So it looks like it's connecting. At this point, it's authenticating with my Couchbase server, and it's getting metadata from the Couchbase server about the available buckets. So we're just using the samples that are available from Couchbase. So we have the beer sample and the travel sample. All of my demos are going to use the beer sample just because it's the one that I'm the most familiar with. So we want to include some data. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the beer and the brewery. So this is going to be all of the beer documents and all the brewery documents that are in the beer sample, separated by that document type. And so we want to, there's a relationship here. So we can define that relationship. So this is going to be, we're going to grab the brewery ID from each beer, and that's going to map to the document ID from each brewery. And so with this done, we've bound this relationship between these two tables, even though they're within a single bucket, because of the way that the data is modeled relationally. It creates two separate tables based on the document types. And so we've got this relationship that's bound between. As you can see, we're doing a live connection. So this is not an extract. So everything that I do as I build out this dashboard is going to be live. So every change I make means a new query to the data. And you will see kind of how performant that is based on the engineering on the Couchbase side and on the CData side. So we are going to grab the number of beers. This is beers, yes, as a count. So we're going to do that for the columns. And then we're going to set the actual document ID for the brewery for the rows. So this should give us a count of each beer by brewery. So we can actually, let's sub out, let's do name. Might be a little easier to read. All right, so we've got each brewery and the number of beers by brewery, but I actually want to get some more information out of this. So why don't we add the category from each beer as a color in Tableau? And so this will give us a more visual representation of everything that's available. So you can see that this 3 Fontanen, I'm butchering that, it only has one category of beer, but 21st Amendment Brew Cafe has 4. So, it's got 7 North American ales, 1 Irish ale, 2 British ales, and 1 Belgian and French ale. And so you can, build more dynamic dashboards. You could add visualizations to this report. You could leverage the drill down functionality of Tableau in order to build something dynamic that drills into your data as you click and explore. But this gives kind of a basic idea of that connectivity. And so next I want to jump to Power BI. So this is going to be a similar experience. We're going to build out a visualization based on the data that's available. And so the way that we do that is we click Get Data. And then getting to data in Power BI is a little bit more involved. So I'm just going to go ahead and search. So we'll go CData Couchbase and I'll connect. I've pre-configured this connection, but it's going to ask for me again. One of the things that's of note is that you are able to configure separate connections for Couchbase with the Power BI connectors. So you could actually configure multiple connections to different Couchbase servers if that was a use case for you. So you do that externally outside of Power BI, and then you just reference that connection. Anyone that's familiar with ODBC technology is going to be familiar with an ODBC DSN, which is similar to how the Couchbase Power BI connectors behave. And again, and this is a feature of the CData connectors, is we're going to do direct query, which is the same as live in Tableau. That way we don't have to worry about importing all of the data. And it also means that we can do more real-time reporting, real-time dashboarding as we go. So we'll click OK. And this is going to do that same metadata query. So this is asking Couchbase server, well, what kind of data is available to me here? And so, it hit the first level. So it's only picking up the beer sample. We're going to do the same tables. So all the beers and all the breweries. So we're going to load both of those. And when it says load here, it simply means loading the metadata. It's not actually importing all of the data available. So it's creating those connections. We'll see the fields pop up on this side as they come in. And then before we start building any visualizations, again, I want to define that relationship and bind those two tables together based on my working knowledge of their relationship. So we have the brewery ID for the beers, and that's going to map to the document ID of the breweries. So this is just making sure that everything goes through properly. So we hit OK, and it determined that it was a many to one relationship based on the values that were available. That's a function of Power BI that is supported by the CData Power BI connectors. And now, again, with this relationship bound, we're able to come in and start building out a visualization. So we are going to start with some filtering. So I'm actually going to grab the category of beer. And we're going to do some basic filtering. So it's querying, it's doing some discovery. What are all of the available values for the category? We want everything but the blanks. And then at this point, we are going to start dealing with things. So why don't we add, I want to count of the number of beers. So if we do this, and we make a chart. And then I'll add this, move this to value. So this becomes a count. So this is my total number of beers. So 4,423 beers. So taking the document ID, which is the unique identifier for each beer. So we can see that, but now let's kind of drill down and figure out what's going on. So we'll actually pull the category in. And so now we can see, differently colored slots in our chart based on that. And then let's actually take the brewery, the country of each brewery, and make that an axis. So we can see, this gets a little tough to see because the United States has a ton of different beers available from a ton of different breweries. So let's add another filter. So we're actually going to grab everything but the blanks and the United States. So as you can see, there's 875 beers. It skews the chart a little bit. So we'll just eliminate this. And what's nice about what's going on, because I did the direct query option, every time I change a filter, every time I add a filter, it's asking Couchbase for more data. And this is really useful if you're exploring the data or building out something, that's going to be more dynamic. If you add filtering to your dashboard itself, so when you publish your dashboard, a user can apply different filters. It's going to ask Couchbase for the data every time the filter is applied. And this helps when you've got real-time data coming in. So let's say you've got something that's streaming data into your Couchbase database. So every time the dashboard is refreshed, it's going to get whatever changes occurred in that database. So, it doesn't make as much sense for, a list of breweries and beers. People aren't, establishing new breweries and brewing new beers, on a minute by minute basis. But if you're at, say, an event and you're tracking leads, and as these leads are being pumped in, you could update your dashboard and it would show, the new leads that came in within the past minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whenever you last refreshed the data. And this extends. So, Power BI has other drill down capabilities. If I added other visualizations, I could click on a specific type of beer and it would highlight that, and it would highlight that in other visualizations. Again, because it's a direct query, a live connection, it's going to grab those and use those new queries to get data. So you're getting, up to the minute real-time data connectivity. So that covers Couchbase and in Power BI. So I'm just gonna, I think what I want to do next is, let's look at Python. So I've got, PowerShell window, just a simple console up and ready to go. I've installed the Python connector. It installs like any other Python module. So you'll use the pip install command to do that. But at this point, I'm ready to just jump right in. So I'll do it as a script, live instead of doing it through, as a .py file. So we're going to import the different modules that are needed. So just importing different modules, specifically the create engine module, our function from the SQL Alchemy module that allows us to talk to a database. So anyone that knows Python knows that you can talk to a database using a connection string. And so what the CData Python connectors enable is that same kind of connectivity. So connecting to your data through a connection string, but to things that aren't databases or that aren't traditionally supported relational databases. So I'm simply typing in, my username, password. The last thing is the server. So just connecting to something local here, but you would be able to connect to anything that you wanted. And the next step is going to be to connect to Couchbase and pump a bunch of data into a data frame. So I'm actually going to copy and paste this. And then, so we'll paste it, and then I want to make sure that I am using my syntax properly. So normally when you talk to a database, you have catalog, schema, table. Because of the way that Couchbase data is structured, and you get that dot notation that drills down even further. So this just makes sure that the SQL engine knows that everything that's within brackets should be considered a table, and we name our tables based on the dot notation that Couchbase uses, just because it keeps things familiar. So I think that should be good. So this is actually reading the data from Couchbase as we go. What I'm selecting here is a count of each brewery by country and state, grouping by the state. You can't see the full query, but from those breweries that are in the United States. So we're going to isolate the United States for this one. So the next thing we want to do is plot this data frame. So we're going to use a bar chart. And the x-axis is going to be the state. And the y-axis is going to be the total. So we've created the plot. And so the next thing I have to do is simply show the plot. It's probably going to show up in a separate window. But if we come over here, we drag it over, should be able to expand it. So we can see each country or each state. So there's blanks. And then you have each state as it exists. So California, it looks like has the most. Where's my home state? North Carolina. There we go. So that's not doing too bad. Looks like about 20 different breweries that are in this registry from North Carolina. So that's cool. So this is connecting to Couchbase from Python. And you can do this, from pure script. You can do this from a variety of platforms. So if you're creating Jupyter notebooks or using other Python centric platforms, the connectivity is the same. Simply install the module, import it as needed, and then talk to Couchbase just like talking to any other database. Okay, so we have RStudio open and we're ready to look at our Couchbase data in R. And the way that we do that is using the CData JDBC driver. So the first thing I want to do is load the RJDBC library because we're going to use JDBC. And the next thing I need to do is create a driver object. So this references the driver class that's available in the documentation for the JDBC driver, the class path, which is the location on disk for the JDBC driver itself. So we create the driver object, and then we can use that driver object to connect to our Couchbase instance. So setting username, the server, the password, and then once we've established this connection, we can use that connection to query data. So we're going to do something similar to what we did in Python. But I'm actually going to limit this by the states. So in the previous one, in the previous query in Python, we could see that there were, states where it was abbreviated and states where it wasn't. I want only those states that are not abbreviated. So I'm actually going to use the length state. And so what's going to happen here is the SQL query is going to get pushed to this JDBC driver. And then the JDBC driver is actually going to push down whatever functionality it can directly to Couchbase and rely on the Couchbase performance to handle all of the filtering and all of the sorting. And even where it supports it, functions like this length function in SQL. So we're going to get the count of breweries by state only in the United States and only those breweries whose state field is the full name of the state and not the abbreviation. So I'm going to talk to Couchbase. And we get the results so we can actually preview those. So as you can see, we have 49 different results for the different states, and then the total number of breweries by state, depending on that. And then the last thing that we're going to do is actually chart this. So it's a little bit easier to see. So just building out, configuring charting. And then the last thing we want to do is build out our par plot. So we're going to use the total from the results, set the title to US. Breweries by state. And then the only name that we're going to use is the state value. And then just for readability, we're going to do this as a horizontal chart. So it runs. So we can see, as it goes through, similar to the chart that we had in Python, you can see the total number of breweries by state, as it exists in that beer sample. So thankfully we had time to get through all of the demos. And so that'll push us to the takeaways. So the biggest takeaway is that you're able to get connect to Couchbase data from anywhere. So whether that's BI and analytics tools, BI and reporting tools, and or development platforms, scripting languages, or anything like that. You get real-time insights on your Couchbase data thanks to real-time connectivity. And because you can connect to Couchbase from anywhere and you get real-time connectivity, you're able to empower both your citizen analysts and your data experts into gaining actionable insights into their data, into the data that's stored in Couchbase, and help make decisions that drive growth for your business. So if you'd like to take the next step, you can always drop by the CData booth here at Couchbase Connect. If you want to connect offline or in an asynchronous fashion, you can go to cdata.com/driver/Couchbase, and that's going to be the place to get the most information. Email sales@cdata.com if you have any questions about the CData drivers, whether that comes to licensing use cases or any other questions you may have. And if you'd like to download a free trial, you can actually do that from cdata.com. So go to cdata.com/driver/Couchbase/download. So again, I am Jared Johnson, Technology Evangelist for CData Software. I can see that there are people in the chat, so I'll get to any questions. I'm actually live in the chat as well, so any questions that you have, I will answer there. Or if you need to jump to another session or jump out somewhere else, you can always drop by the booth. I should be there, or any of my other colleagues will be there to help answer your questions. So I'd like to say thanks again to Couchbase for having CData here and allowing us the opportunity to speak about our products and the problems that we solve. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Couchbase Connect, and hopefully I'll see you at my booth.